Hey, that's just the way the cookie crumbles sometimes, Laker fans, right? If we're being perfectly honest here, y'all are due about 10 years of unfortunate calls. Way I see it, it was in your arena, right? Y'all, it's your clock operator. No. I get it. Any fan base is going to point to that and be frustrated because it was funky. There was some funky stuff in that game last night. Let's talk about the return of the chef, though. Let's talk about Steph Curry. And you heard him say, hey, man, I'm not going to be 100% the rest of this year. And anyone who has had, ankle turns like that knows this to be true. And really, usually what it is it's the mobility in the ankle, right? It's stiff. It'll stay stiff for weeks and even months at a time, depending on how old you are and how severe of an ankle turn it was. And so what I'd highlight is if it's that right ankle, obviously sliding to your left laterally, cutting off a right driver, and his step back as well. Steph being a right-handed shooter, he likes to plant hard off the right foot to get to his step back. Those are the two motions that I would circle and keep an eye on as far as the mobility and pain threshold in that ankle. And initially I saw him, he got downhill and he did some weird funky plant where he didn't really want to test it. But as he broke a sweat and got going, he was hitting hezzies and step backs and all that. And he got over the mental aspect of it. And I think about a quarter. And I think we expected maybe a little bit of rust physically, but what I liked to see from Steph was he seemed sharp mentally. It seemed like the week off maybe gave him a chance to rest his mind and recharge his mental state towards the game, because I thought he was crisp and sharp in his return, more so mentally than physically. And then the physical came after that. Now, let's talk about Klay. Let's talk about Klay in this new six-man role, and his old man game is arriving just on time. And I'm loving watching it happen, man, because that's what happened to me. About 35, I'm 40 now. The last 5 years as a jump shooter, I realized like I can't elevate like I used to on each jump shot. It's just not consistent for me enough, especially in a full court game. I don't have the legs to do that. And it's taken Klay some time here, but I think he's realized like, hey, I can't elevate like I used to, not consistently at least, right? And so you're seeing him take much more of a set shot, much less elevation in the leg, and it's still that pretty flick release. And it's going to, listen, what it does is you can't get off as many shots as you used to when you used to have that vertical bounce in your jump shot. But when you do get it, it almost becomes more consistent because it's just a more compact, reliant shot. You just don't maybe have as many opportunities. But you saw him get going with a couple threes. But the other thing that he started to do is get downhill, plant on 2 feet, and understand who he is to the league. He's going to get guys in the air all the time, every time. And he's doing it consistently night in and night out. And I'm just happy for him that the weight off his shoulders seems to be gone. He's playing so much more free. He seems so much lighter, his aura, right? But it's like he's again, that downhill pump fake, get to the line game, something he never really did in his prime. It almost reminds me of a pitcher who just threw gas, right? 101 mile per hour, 100 mile per hour gas. The batter knew what he was throwing. He knew what he was throwing. He's just going to blow it by you. Ain't nothing you can do with it, right? But as he's lost a little gas on that arm, you gotta incorporate a little off-speed stuff, right? And that's like what Klay seems to be doing. He's like, listen, let me incorporate, so get to the line. Let me use my shooting and keep the defense a little more off balance. And so I'm really enjoying watching Klay figure this out and adapt to this phase in his career. Let's talk a little bit about Kuminga specifically to start the game, right? Because wasn't it just last week where I said, hey, y'all, I don't think you're going to be able to just leave him out there on the perimeter. He's too confident of a shooter to do that. You're not going to mess with his head, and his mechanics aren't so bad or broken that it's not a mechanical thing, right? There are some limitations I'll talk about in a second, but he has the confidence of a star player. You saw him hit the step back on AD. He got to the mid-ranger, hit another corner three, right? And then all of a sudden AD had to come out at him. He's like, got you, went to the midi again. And Ja Morant, Anthony Edwards, two guys that come to mind who are, S-tier athletes in this league. And Kuminga I put in that group. And when you're that level of athlete and you have that type of scary burst in athleticism, you can almost play at half speed just based off the threat of your athleticism and your burst. It's funny. I was watching like Lamar Jackson with the Ravens. You watch him in the pocket, and you watch guys they're almost hesitant to get to him, to get downhill at him because they're so afraid of what his burst. And John Ant have figured that out already, where they can just play really slow, and guys, the threat of their burst gives them the space. And I think Kuminga's starting to figure that out because there was a smoothness to those jump shots, and it was at a slower half-speed pace. And what that smoothness, I think, allowed him to do was it gave him a softer touch on his release. And so I'm excited about that. And speaking of the mechanics, listen, it's never going to look like Paul George. I know that that's somewhat of a comp for him. It's not going to ever look that pretty. And the set point, the release point of it isn't as ideally high as you would like. But I think what he has going for him is the elbow, his shooting elbow, and his path to his set point in his release is always straight. It's very compact, tight, and straight. And that's a good thing. I think that's why you're seeing him shoot so well at the foul line. Cost me on my picks last night, though, JK. 2 missed free throws in the fourth. I'm going to leave it alone. What else? That leads me to AD. I get it, Laker fans. I get it. Like, that completely changes the game. There's no doubt about it. But what's the saying? No one's going to feel sorry for you in this league. And at this point, I said it in today's breakdown, AD gets hit in the face more than Tony Ferguson. It's just unbelievable. You feel bad for the guy, right? But from what I understood, the elbow from Trace on the contest, I think it swelled up to where he couldn't see, right? Y'all correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think it's that his eye was scratched. It swelled up like a boxer on him, right? So he couldn't see. He only plays the first quarter. And what that meant was a ton of Rui Hachimura, who, listen, Laker fans, I know y'all don't like Taurean Prince. Taurean Prince plays 3 times as hard as Hachimura. Like, Rui, it's shameful, his defense. It's embarrassing. And the Warriors identified it and feasted off him for the remaining 3 quarters. Be clear about it. And so I don't know what you do. I get it. He's the better offensive player because Taurean can get out of pocket offensively. But again, having D'Lo and Rui out there defensively for long stretches, I don't know how you can do it. They both play fake defense where they're like, well, I'm kind of here. They act as if they don't know any personnel. That's y'all problem. I'm glad I ain't got to watch it every night, but there's no doubt that was a huge impact on the game. 2 other people that I wanted to make note of for the Warriors: Andrew Wiggins, 17 shot attempts. I know you've heard that number. Hasn't taken that many shots since November 28th in Sacramento. So that's a great sign, right? I think it's very clear for Wiggins, if you can get him on the move, headed right, usually going to work out for you. Good things are going to happen. Now, I know you could say that about a lot of guys, but with his stride and athleticism, and you see they made a conscious effort to do that, whether he's curling off a pin down or even in transition, just get him moving to his right with that stride really encourages his aggression. And then Chris Paul. Chris Paul, I think, buried behind LeBron and Steph's performances and the clock fiasco and stuff I'll get into here in a minute, was those non-Steph minutes to start the fourth, that steady hand, and he really kept the Lakers at arm's length. Ended third, started the fourth. Podziemski, he only had 5 points. You talk about timely points. He hits that corner 3, second chance opportunity, and then the floater, because that was a danger time there. Ended third, started fourth, where the Lakers were making a push there, right? So CP, steady hand, was big. And then let's get into it. First, was it the shot clock violation first, where we got a double shot clock? Hey, man, like I said to open the video, that's y'all arena. Of course it's unfair. I get it. Any fan for that team is going to be like, what is this, right? But it'd be one thing if it was at Chase. That's y'all shot clock operator. So it is what it is, right? And then the corner 3 that was wiped away. First off, we all know LeBron is an elite liar. So, you can't prove, it is what it is. He says he's never seen that. They've been doing that for a while. It's happened to the Warriors plenty of times where it's either usually what it is it's a foot on the line and they say it's a 2 instead of a 3, right? But he's in the corner there. And I'll be perfectly honest, to me, it was inconclusive. And so is it the same as in the NFL where if it's inconclusive, you have to go with the call on the floor? So yeah, I thought that it should have stuck and it should have been 4 instead of 7. But hey, that's how the cookie crumbles sometimes, right? Y'all are due some of these calls, if you want to be honest. And then you have that. Why did the shot? My question is, why did the shot clock operator continue to tell the refs and everybody, no, we got it, let's do it, we got it? Like, what made you think that it was working? Wouldn't you check it first and run it and then say, let's do it again? Anyway, that made it a very anticlimactic finish, right? And I thought Kerr might pull Steph on that final possession just because after 15 minutes, it felt like if that was like the final possession, even though there was a minute and a half left, it felt like if the Lakers don't score here, it's a wrap. And you thought maybe you'd just put GP2 in there because you knew they were hunting the Steph switch. But the familiarity, the rivalry, the competitive spirit between those two, and Steph, he sat on LeBron's right hand because LeBron was going right the entire night. You know, he went by Trace like 5 times right. And I don't know if it's that hurt foot because LeBron used to love to go left. Now he's been going right. And I think Steph knew that. He sat on the right hand and he got them cookies. And that pretty much ended it, right? LeBron was pat-statting at the end going for 40. How are you not taking threes there? And we come away with the win. And again, Laker fans, I get it. You're going to point to the clock shenanigans and no AD, but I don't care at this point. Warrior, we don't care at this point. We at this point in the season where if it is going to come down to the Lakers and the Warriors in the play-in game, home court could be huge. We all know that, right? And so, yeah, I'll get it however we can. It's unfortunate that the way it ended and how it did because it was a great game. I guess the other little storyline is the tightening of the rotation from Steve Kerr. Obviously, Dario and Looney are out of it. And now with Steph back, it looks like Moses is the odd man out again. And I mean, it's pretty easy to point to he hasn't been shooting the ball very well. I will say in doing my breakdowns and watching the games twice, he doesn't get a ton of open looks. He's for some reason, he tends to get a lot of like grenades and like late swings where there's a contest, but he's not knocking them down. And then while it is a team-wide issue, the help defense, particularly when they drop into zone, Moody has a really hard time in his zone. I don't know if he just didn't play it in high school or at Arkansas, but he just doesn't really understand. The way I used to explain it to kids a lot of the time is it's like playing monkey in the middle, right? You don't want to overcommit to one way. There are certain rules in certain zones, but when you're like on the weak side of a zone, you got to split the difference. And Moody just has a hard time doing that. And so that to go along with his non-shooting, he's out of the fold right now, but we know how this season's gone. Next week, we could be talking about him playing 25 minutes. So we'll see. A win's a win. And Steph, looks good enough, right? He was very honest about it. Draymond looks good enough. I guess that's the other thing. He had very good numbers. Draymond, I had been saying it for weeks. He finally said it's his back. I didn't know that it was his back. I knew something was wrong. And it started in Boston that afternoon where we get the Jalen thing to an extent, but it was too much. It was like, like I said, he doesn't really want to move. Have you ever had lower back problems? You don't want to jump. You don't really want to move. It's debilitating. So credit to him for going out there and doing what he can do. At this point in the season, unfortunately, I don't know how much rest you can give him, but you'd like to give him a week off if you could. Give Trace 30 minutes. Got the Knicks in San Francisco Monday. They're going to be looking for revenge. We handled them in the Garden last month, so that's not going to be an easy game. But at this point, the whole season hasn't been easy, right? Hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.